I've always thought of the woods as a place of peace. The city is loud, suffocating, and full of strangers who pretend not to see you even when you're standing right in front of them. But the forest, that's where I could breathe. The air tasted different out there, sharp and clean, the kind that filled your lungs all the way down. At least, that's what I used to believe before everything went wrong. Before the forest stopped being a place of peace and became a nightmare I can never forget. It all started one Friday afternoon in late October. The plan was simple. Me and 3 friends, Eric, Megan, and Tyler, would drive out of the city, find a camping spot by Black Pines Lake, and spend the weekend off-grid. No phones, no Wi-Fi, no responsibilities. Just us, the fire, and the stars. Black Pines Lake had a reputation. People said the land around it was cursed, that hikers went missing and campers never returned. The old folks whispered stories about strange lights between the trees, voices calling your name in the middle of the night, shadows that moved even when nothing else did. I laughed it off when Eric mentioned it in the car. Every forest has ghost stories, I said, stretching the back seat. It's just a way to keep kids from sneaking out at night. Tyler smirked. Yeah, but most ghost stories don't come with actual police reports of missing people. Megan punched his arm. Don't start, Ty. You'll just freak everyone out before we even get there. Eric, who was driving, gave a half smile. Relax. The ranger station still allows camping there. If it was that dangerous, it would be shut down, right? I remember the silence that followed. No one answered him. We just kept driving. The further we got from the city, the stranger it felt. The sun hung low, bleeding orange across the horizon. But the deeper we went into the woods, the less of it we saw. The trees grew thicker, their branches clawing over the road like crooked fingers, swallowing the light. The asphalt narrowed, cracked, and then disappeared into dirt. When we finally parked, there were no other cars, no other campers, just us. We unloaded our gear, each of us trying to act like we weren't uneasy. But I could feel it, the quiet pressing in on us. The forest wasn't alive the way most are. No chirping birds, no buzzing insects, no crunch of small animals scurrying through the undergrowth. Just silence. I shook it off. It's perfect, I said, forcing a smile. We got the whole place to ourselves. We set up camp near the lake's edge. The water was still, so still looked like glass, reflecting the trees and the dying sky. Our tents went up fast, and soon Eric had a fire going. The crackling flames broke the silence, and for a moment, it felt almost normal. We ate, we laughed, we drank. But then the first strange thing happened. It was around 10 p.m. Tyler had just finished telling some dumb story about a kid who ate mushrooms and swore he saw a Bigfoot. Megan was laughing so hard she nearly spilled her drink. That's when I noticed it. Across the lake, between the trees, a light. It flickered once, twice, like someone carrying a lantern. Do you see that? I asked, pointing. Everyone turned. The laughter stopped. Eric narrowed his eyes. Maybe another camper? But we hadn't seen a single soul since we arrived. No cars, no tents, no voices. Nothing. The light swayed left, then right, before vanishing into the darkness. Tyler exhaled sharply. Probably a ranger, or some hiker with a flashlight. Then where's their camp? Megan asked. Her voice was tight, uneasy. No one had an answer. Later that night, long after the fire burned low, I crawled into my tent. The ground was cold and hard beneath my sleeping bag, and the silence pressing again. I tried to tell myself it was just nerves, that I was tired, that I'd had a few drinks, that I wasn't really hearing what I thought I was hearing. But I swear I heard footsteps outside my tent. Slow, careful, circling. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The fire had died completely, leaving only the black. The footsteps stopped right outside. For a moment, I thought I saw the faintest glow against the tent fabric, like that lantern light from across the lake. And then, a whisper. It was so close I couldn't tell if it was inside my head or right outside the canvas. It said my name. I woke up the next morning with the taste of dirt in my mouth and the uneasy sense that I hadn't been dreaming. But if I told the others, they'd just laugh. So I kept it to myself. At least for now. The morning came too bright, too normal, as if the night had never happened. Sunlight poured through the trees, bouncing off the lake until the water looked like it was covered in shards of glass. Birds were singing somewhere far off. The air smelled of pine and smoke. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it had been a dream. That whisper, that light, those footsteps. But then I saw them. Footprints. They circled my tent. Deep impressions in the damp earth. Not boots, not shoes, bare feet. I froze, crouched low, my fingers hovering just above the ground. The prints were larger than mine, longer, with narrow arches and long, stretched out toes that seemed wrong, like whoever, or whatever, had walked around my tent in the night wasn't fully human. A shiver ran down my spine. Morning. Eric's voice broke the silence. He came stumbling out his tent, rubbing his eyes. Damn, that fire burned out fast. I stood quickly, brushing dirt off my hands. Yeah, guess it did. I didn't tell him about the footprints. Not yet. By breakfast, everyone was awake. Megan boiled instant coffee over the rekindled fire, humming under her breath, while Tyler messed around with the cooler, complaining that half the ice had melted. This place is already creeping me out, Megan said, wrapping her hands around a steaming tin mug. Last night I swore I heard. I don't know. Something. What kind of something? Eric asked. She hesitated, like whispering, but soft, far away. I figured it was just the wind. My chest tightened. I wanted to say I heard it too. I wanted to tell her about the prints, but the word stuck in my throat. If I said it out loud, it would make it real. Tyler scoffed. Wind, trees, owls, woods are full of weird noises. You're just not used to it. Megan frowned but didn't argue. The day stretched on uneventfully at first. We hiked a few trails, gathered firewood, skipped rocks across the lake. By afternoon, the sense of unease I'd woken would have dulled into the background hum of the forest. But then things started disappearing. It was subtle at first. Eric couldn't find his lighter. He swore he'd left it on the log by the fire pit, but it was gone. We searched for 20 minutes before giving up, assuming he dropped it somewhere on the trail. Then Megan's scarf vanished. 1 second it was draped over her camping chair. The next it wasn't. Tyler laughed. Probably the wind, or you just forgot where you put it. But I saw the way Megan's hands trembled as she checked her bag for the third time. And later, when I went to grab a water bottle from my own pack, I noticed one of my flashlights was missing. That was when my stomach turned, because I knew without a doubt I had misplaced it. Someone or something was taking our things. That night, the forest was even quieter than before. The four of us sat close around the fire, the flames spitting sparks into the dark. Tyler tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but nobody really laughed. Our missing items weren't much on their own, but stacked together, they felt like pieces of something bigger. I told you, Megan said, her voice tight. This place is wrong. It's like it doesn't want us here. Eric shook his head. You're just spooking yourself. Look, I get it, it's creepy, but we're fine. Nothing's happening that can't be explained. I almost spoke then, almost told him about the footprints, the whisper, the glow outside my tent. But before I could, a sound broke through the silence. Splash. It came from the lake. We all froze, our eyes snapping toward the water. Splash. Like something heavy breaking the surface. Probably a fish, Tyler said quickly. Too quickly. But the way he gripped the log he was sitting on told me he didn't believe that. We waited, staring at the black water, but nothing else happened. The ripples spread and then faded, leaving only the reflection of the moon. Later, when I finally crawled into my tent, I lay awake for hours listening. And then it came again. Footsteps. Not rushed, not careless, deliberate, circling. I held my breath, every muscle locked, my ears straining. The steps stopped right at the flap of my tent. And then, slowly, the faint scrape of fingers against the canvas. Dragging. Down. My heart hammered. So hard, I thought it would burst out of my chest. And then I heard it. That whisper again. Closer. Clearer. It said my name. But this time it wasn't alone. I heard Eric's name. Megan's. Tyler's. One after another, soft and breathy, like the voice was savoring them. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the sound stopped. The night went silent. But I knew, whatever it wasn't going away. It was waiting. I woke to shouting. My eyes flew open, and for a second I couldn't place where I was. The smell of smoke, the damp chill of morning air, the stiff ache in my back. It all came rushing back. The camp, the woods, the whispers. Then I heard it again, Eric's voice. Guys, over here. I scrambled out of my tent, nearly tripping on the flap. Megan was already awake, rubbing her arms against the cold. Tyler stumbled out after me, hair sticking up, eyes bleary. What the hell is it now? Tyler muttered. Eric was standing by the edge of the lake, pointing. His face was pale, tight with something I hadn't seen on him before, fear. We followed his finger. At first I thought it was driftwood, a log that had washed up on the shore during the night. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw it wasn't that at all. It was an animal, or what was left of one. A deer, half submerged in the water, its head twisted at an impossible angle. Its body was bloated, the skin pale and torn. Its eyes, what was left of them, stared blankly at the sky. "Oh my God," Megan whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Eric swallowed hard. "That wasn't here yesterday. I walked this shoreline when we set up camp. I would have seen it." Tyler grimaced. "So it washed up overnight. Big deal. It happens." But even he didn't sound convinced, because the deer didn't look like it had drowned, or even like it had been attacked by another animal. It looked like it had been placed there. We stood there in silence, the morning sun casting long shadows across the lake. The forest was quiet again, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Finally, Megan shook her head. "I don't like this. I don't like any of this." "Relax," Eric said, though his voice was strained. "It's just nature, circle of life. Stuff dies in the woods all the time. Then where are the scavengers?" I asked before I could stop myself. They all looked at me. "What do you mean?" Megan asked. I gestured at the deer. No birds, no insects, nothing feeding on it. It's just sitting there. The realization seemed to settle over all of us at once. The air grew heavier, colder. Finally, Tyler muttered, "We should move camp, maybe hike further up the trail." No one argued. By midday, we had packed everything and started moving. Our gear felt heavier than before, every step dragging. The trail wound deep into the woods, the trees pressing closer, blotting out the sun. The deeper we went, the more wrong it felt. The silence wasn't just an absence of sound anymore. It felt deliberate, like the forest was listening. At one point, Megan froze, her eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. We stopped. "Listen." At first, I heard nothing. Then, faintly, from somewhere behind us, crunch, like a footstep. We spun around, but the trail behind us was empty. Just trees, stretching back toward the lake. Tyler swore under his breath. Probably an animal. But none of us believed that. We walked faster after that. By late afternoon, we found a small clearing. The ground was level, the trees a little thinner. It wasn't much, but it felt safer than staying by the lake with that dead thing staring at us. We set up quickly, trying not to look at one another. Nobody wanted to admit it, but the unease had settled into something heavier now. Fear. That night, the fire seemed smaller, weaker. Shadows stretched long and jagged, twisting as if they were alive. Tyler tried to joke again, but his voice cracked halfway through. Megan barely touched her food. Eric kept glancing over his shoulder, his hand never far from the hatchet he brought. I tried to stay calm, tried to convince myself we were just spooked. But then, as I stared into the fire, I noticed something. Across the clearing, just beyond the light, stood a figure, tall, motionless. I blinked and it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again. Footsteps, circling, the whisper. This time, it didn't just say my name. It laughed, a low, broken sound that seemed to crawl beneath my skin. When dawn finally came, my hands were shaking, my mouth dry, my body aching from tension. And when I crawled out of my tent, I saw something that made my blood turn cold. Carved into the dirt between our tents was a symbol, a circle, with 3 lines running through it. None of us had drawn it. The symbol sat there between our tents like it had always been there. A circle, drawn deep into the soil, with 3 jagged lines slicing through its center. The grooves were too clean, too deliberate to be from wind or animals. Someone, or something, had carved it while we slept. Megan gasped the moment she saw it. Her face went pale, and she stumbled back as if the thing itself might bite her. Who did this? Tyler raised his hands immediately. Don't look at me. I was out cold all night. Yes, sure, Eric muttered, crouching beside the carving. He ran his fingers along the lines, frowning. It's too straight. No way this is random. Eric, Megan snapped, are you seriously touching it? He ignored her. It's like some kind of symbol, but I don't recognize it. I swallowed hard, the memory of the whisper gnawing at me. It said our names. It laughed, and then this shows up. I didn't do it, I said quietly. No one responded right away. The silence was worse than an accusation. Finally, Megan broke it. I don't like this. I want to leave. Today. Leave. Tyler scoffed. We hiked hours to get here. You really want to haul all this crap back already? Over some creepy doodle? It's not a doodle, she shot back. Something's wrong here, Ty. Can't you feel it? I expected Eric to take her side, but instead he stood, dusting his hands off, his jaw set. We're not leaving. Not yet. Megan stared at him. You're kidding. No, Eric said firmly. Look, maybe it's some other campers messing with us. Maybe locals, I don't know. But if we pack up now, we'll just look stupid when we get home. Let's stay one more night. If anything else happens, we go. Agreed? His voice carried authority, the kind that dared you to argue. No one spoke. And just like that, the decision was made. The day passed in a tense blur. We tried to distract ourselves with another hike, but the mood was different now. No jokes, no laughter. Just the sound of boots crunching dirt and the occasional snap of a branch. Every so often, I caught Megan glancing over her shoulder, eyes darting between the trees. I couldn't blame her. More than once, I thought I saw something move in the shadows, too tall and too fast to be an animal. By late afternoon, we returned to camp, exhausted. The symbol was still there, etched deep in the dirt, like a warning we weren't allowed to ignore. Tyler tried to cover with leaves and dirt, but no matter how much he kicked over it, the groove seemed to cut through, faint but visible. Like it's burned in, he muttered. Megan refused to look at it at all. That night, things got worse. We sat around the fire again, but no one spoke much. The woods felt alive in a way they hadn't before, like the silence wasn't silence at all, but listening, watching. And then, just as we were finishing our food, Megan froze. Her fork clattered to the ground. What? Eric asked. She lifted a shaking hand and pointed across the clearing. Hanging from one of the trees was her missing scarf. It dangled from a low branch, swaying gently, even though there was no wind. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then Eric stood abruptly, grabbing the hatchet. Stay here. He crossed the clearing, eyes locked on the scarf. Don't. Megan cried, but it was too late. Eric yanked it down, holding it in his fist like a trophy. See? It's just... Snap. The sound came from the darkness beyond him, a branch breaking under weight. Not an animal. Something bigger. Eric froze. Slowly, he backed toward us, the scarf still clutched in his hand. The fire crackled, shadows dancing, and then we all heard it. Laughter, not loud, not human, a low, broken cackle that drifted through the trees, wrapping around us like smoke. Megan screamed. Tyler cursed under his breath. Eric dropped the scarf into the fire. It curled and blackened instantly, the flames devouring it. But the laughter didn't stop. If anything, it grew closer. We huddled near the fire the rest of the night, too scared to move. None of us dared go into our tents. The flames became our only shield, a fragile barrier between us and whatever lurked in the dark. At some point, exhaustion pulled me under. My head bobbed, my eyes fluttered shut. When I woke, the fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the symbol, the circle with 3 lines, was back. This time, it wasn't carved into the dirt. It was burned into the ground, right where the fire had been. Morning came heavy. Not bright, not warm, just gray. The kind of light that makes you wonder the sun even bothered to rise. The burned-in circle where the fire had been still smoldered faintly. Thin wisps of smoke curling upward like dying breaths. Nobody spoke at first. We just stared at it, the blackened symbol seared into ground. Megan was the first to break the silence. Her voice cracked when she said it. "We need to go now, please." Eric shook his head. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin pale, but his jaw was set. "Not yet. Not yet." Megan's voice pitched high, shrill with fear. "Are you insane? Something out there is watching us, playing with us. It burned that into the ground, Eric. You think we're safe here?" Eric didn't answer right away. He just kept staring at the symbol like it held some secret he could unravel if he looked long enough. Finally, he muttered, "One more day. If we leave now, we'll just be running blind through the woods. Whatever's out there, it's not just going to let us go." Megan's eyes filled with tears. "You don't know that." "No," Eric admitted, finally meeting her gaze. "But I feel it." The way he said it made my stomach twist. We spent the morning packing up, not to leave, but to move. None of us wanted to stay in that clearing another night. We hiked deeper into the forest, following the trail, though it felt less like a path and more like a throat closing around us. The trees grew taller, denser, blotting out the sky. The air grew colder. And that silence, always that silence. At one point, Tyler muttered, "Feels like we're walking in circles." "We're not," Eric said sharply, though he didn't sound convinced. But Tyler was right. I recognized a tree, its trunk split in two, like a giant Y. I'd seen it yesterday. We were looping. We didn't argue, though. No one wanted to admit the forest itself seemed to be twisting around us. By late afternoon, we found another clearing and dropped our packs. No one spoke much as we set up. Every sound seemed too loud. The rustle of fabric, the clang of a pot, the strike of a match. When night fell, the forest pressed closer. We built another fire, but the flames felt smaller than ever. Megan sat curled into herself, arms wrapped tight, staring into the dark. Eric sharpened his hatchet obsessively, the rasp of metal on stone grating in the stillness. Tyler paced the edge of the light. "I swear, if I hear that laugh again, I'm gone. I don't care if it's midnight. I'll walk all the way back to the road." "You'll get lost," Eric muttered without looking up. "Better lost than bait," Tyler shot back. The two locked eyes across the fire. For a second, I thought they were going to fight. And then, snap, a branch breaking in the dark. We all froze. The sound was close. Too close. Tyler grabbed a flashlight and aimed it into the trees. The beam cut through the dark, but there was nothing, just trunks and branches. He swept it back and forth, breathing hard. And then the light landed on something. Eyes, shining back at us. But they weren't animal eyes. They were too high off the ground, too still. The moment the beam hit them, they vanished. Megan whimpered. Eric gripped the hatchet tighter. And then the laughter started again. It circled us, drifting through the trees. High, low, near, far, mocking. Tyler cursed and bolted toward the sound, flashlight bouncing wildly. "I've had enough of this." "Tyler!" I shouted, but he didn't stop. Eric leapt up to follow. But by the time we caught up to where he'd gone, Tyler was gone. The flashlight lay on the ground, its beam shining weakly on the trees. But there was no sign of him. No footsteps leading away. Nothing. Just gone. We called for him, until our voices broke. Eric shouted his name. Megan sobbed it. I whispered it into the dark. But the forest swallowed every word. Finally, Eric picked up the flashlight, his face like stone. We go back to camp. We stick together. If he's out here, he'll find us. But none of us believed that. Not really. That night, the fire burned low, and the three of us sat in silence. No one slept. Every crack of a branch, every whisper wind made us flinch. And then, just before dawn, I heard it. Not laughter this time. Crying. Tyler's voice. Calling for help. From somewhere deep in the woods. I don't think I slept more than 10 minutes that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the forest seemed to breathe around me, as though something huge and unseen was moving just beyond the walls of the tent. The others eventually drifted off, but I lay frozen, staring at the nylon ceiling, my body tense and trembling. At some point, I heard a twig snap directly outside my tent. Not just any twig. This was sharp, deliberate, like a foot pressing down with intention. My heart skipped. I held my breath, straining to listen. Silence. Then another crack, and then a dragging sound. Something was moving through the dirt and leaves, circling us. I wanted to scream for Brian or for Mia, but I couldn't bring myself to make a sound. I didn't want whatever it was to know I was awake. The dragging stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I could hear only my own breathing, shallow and quick, threatening to give me away. Then came the whisper, not from my friends, not from any human voice I'd ever heard. It was low, broken, like wind forced through shattered glass. You shouldn't be here. I felt every hair on my body rise. My throat tightened so much I nearly choked on my own breath. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed it was a nightmare. Minutes dragged into hours, and somehow dawn finally broke. The sunlight seeping through the tent fabric was like a lifeline. When I finally crawled out, the others were already awake, looking pale and rattled. Brian's face was tight with unease. You guys, did anyone hear? Yes. Mia cut him off. She looked sick. Voices. Outside. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just me. We walked around the campsite, trying to convince ourselves we'd imagined it. But then we saw the footprints. In the dirt, circling our tents, were depressions. Bare feet. Human-sized. Too many to count. The weirdest part? The prints weren't deep, as if whoever made them had barely weighed anything at all. Like shadows pressing down, instead of real feet. Someone screwing with us, Brian muttered, but his voice cracked. I didn't answer. My eyes had locked onto something else. Something half buried near the fire pit. A tooth. Human by the look of it. Yellow, jagged, with a dark root still attached. And I knew then, whatever had whispered to me last night wasn't trying to scare me away. It was warning me, and we hadn't listened. By the time the sun climbed over the treetops, the forest felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just the footprints or the tooth. It was a quiet, too quiet. No bird calls, no rustle of small animals. The woods around us felt hollow, like the life had been drained out. Mia refused to touch breakfast. She just sat by the fire, hugging her knees and staring into the trees. Brian tried to keep things light, cracking jokes and saying it was probably just some weirdo messing with us. But his forced laughter only made the silence worse. By noon, we decided to hike farther into the woods, hoping to shake off the unease. I carried my pack, but every step felt heavier than the last. It was like the trail itself didn't want us there. After about an hour, we came across something that made us stop cold. A tree, a huge oak, split down the middle as if struck by lightning. But there was no scorch mark, no sign of fire. The inside was hollow, blackened, and stuffed with bones. Small bones. Animals, maybe, but mixing with them was something else. A child's shoe, filthy and torn. Mia gasped and turned away, her face pale. Brian cursed under his breath. Sick bastards. Somebody's been doing rituals out here. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something in my gut told me this wasn't human. The air grew colder the deeper we went. Shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should, even though the sun was still high. Then Mia stopped walking. Where's Derek? We all froze. Derek had been behind us just a few minutes ago, joking about how the woods smelled like wet dog. Now nothing. We called his name. No answer. Brian shouted louder, his voice echoing through the trees. Still nothing. The forest swallowed the sound whole. Panic set in fast. We retraced our steps, shouting, searching the trail for footprints. But the dirt was disturbed everywhere, like too many people had walked over at once. And then we saw it. Derek's backpack, lying in the middle of the trail, unzipped, with his water bottle still inside. But no Derek. No sign of a struggle. Just gone. Mia's voice cracked as she whispered, "We have to leave. We have to leave right now." But I couldn't move. I was staring at something just beyond the trees. A figure. Tall, impossibly tall, standing between the trunks. Too far to make out details, but close enough for me to know it was watching us. And then, as soon as I blinked, it was gone. We didn't move for what felt like forever. The forest pressing around us, heavy and suffocating. Every second Derek didn't answer made the air colder, thicker. Brian was the first to snap out of it. He grabbed his flashlight, though the sun was still up, and started pacing. "We're splitting up," he said, voice sharp, shaky. "Cover more ground. He can't have gone far." "No," I snapped louder than I meant. "We're not splitting up. That's how people disappear." Mia looked at me like I had said the only sane thing all day. But Brian wasn't having it. He was already stomping off into the brush, muttering Derek's name. I followed reluctantly, Mia right behind me. The deeper we went, the more the forest felt wrong, twisting in ways that didn't match the trail we'd walked before. The trees leaned toward us, their branches like arms reaching to pull us in. Then we heard it, a scream, Derek's scream. It tore through the silence, sharp and raw, echoing across the woods. My blood froze. It wasn't just pain in that sound. It was terror, the kind that comes from seeing something you can't understand. We ran. Branches whipped my face. Roots caught my boots. But I didn't stop until we burst into a small clearing. And there he was, Derek, on his knees in the dirt, clutching his face. His backpack was gone, his shirt torn down the back. "Derek!" Mia cried, rushing forward. But I caught her arm before she reached him. Something wasn't right. His body was trembling too violently, like every muscle was firing at once. And when he finally looked up, God, his eyes were gone. Not gouged out, not bloody sockets. Just smooth, pale skin where his eyes should have been, like they had never been there at all. Mia screamed and stumbled back. Brian cursed and raised his flashlight as if it were a weapon. Derek's mouth opened. A sound came out, but it wasn't his voice. It was a whisper, the same one I'd heard outside the tent. Low, broken, carried on something older than the forest itself. "You shouldn't be here." Then his jaw snapped shut with a sickening crack, and he collapsed face first into the dirt. None of us moved. None of us breathed. And somewhere beyond the clearing, in the shadows of the trees, I heard it, the sound of something laughing. For a long moment, none of us moved. The forest was silent, except for the shallow rise and fall of Derek's chest. He was alive. Barely, but whatever had happened to him wasn't natural. Mia crouched down, trembling as she touched his shoulder. "He's breathing," she whispered. "We can't just leave him here." I wanted to tell her no, that we should run, that carrying him back to camp was a mistake. But when Derek shuddered and let out a weak groan, the part of me that still remembered he was my friend won over. Brian and I hauled him up, slinging his arms over our shoulders. His skin was clammy, cold, and I couldn't stop staring at the smooth, pale flesh where his eyes should have been. We half carried, half dragged him back through the trees. The trail seemed different again, twisted, like the forest had shifted while we weren't looking. I swore I saw the same split oak twice, though we'd only passed it once before. By the time we stumbled back into camp, night was falling fast. Shadows crawled long and jagged across the ground, swallowing what little comfort the daylight had given us. We laid Derek inside his tent. He twitched and mumbled, but the words didn't sound like words, just broken sounds, guttural and wet. Mia tried to clean him up, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead. She kept whispering his name like saying it enough times would bring him back. But then he started laughing. Low at first, almost a wheeze, but then louder. The same laugh I'd heard in the woods. It didn't belong to him. It didn't belong to anyone. Brian backed out of the tent, his face pale. "That's not Derek," he muttered. "Whatever we dragged back, that's not him." I wanted to argue, but deep down, I knew he was right. Mia, though, she wouldn't leave his side. She was crying, clutching his hand, begging him to fight whatever this was. Then Derek sat bolt upright, his mouth stretched wide, far wider than it should have, the skin around his jaw tearing at the corners. And from that gaping maw came a voice that shook the tent walls. 3 nights. That's all you have." Mia screamed. Brian grabbed her, yanking her out of the tent. I stumbled back, my body frozen with terror. When Derek finally slumped down again, silent and still, I realized something that made my blood run cold. He hadn't been talking to us. He'd been repeating something he'd been told. A warning, or a countdown. And night 1 had already passed. None of us slept that night. Derek lay motionless in his tent, his breathing ragged, sometimes stopping long enough to make me think he was dead. But then it would start again, too fast, too shallow, like someone was pulling air into him. Mia cried until she had no tears left. Brian sat by the fire with a hatchet across his knees, staring into the dark, waiting for something to move. I just kept hearing Derek's voice in my head. 3 nights. By morning, Brian snapped. "We're done," he said, standing up, eyes wild. "We're packing up and getting the hell out of here. Screw Derek. Screw camping, we're leaving." Normally I would have agreed in a heartbeat, but when I looked at Derek, pale and broken in his tent, I couldn't bring myself to abandon him. "We can't just leave him," I said. Brian grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "That's not Derek anymore. You saw what he did. You heard it. Whatever's in him, it's not our friend." Mia cut in, her voice hoarse. "We'll take him with us. We'll find help. Please." And that was that. We stuffed everything into our packs and hoisted Derek between us. He was lighter than he should have been, like half of him was already gone. The trail felt endless. No matter how far we walked, the forest never thinned, never gave way to the road. After hours of hiking, the sunlight began to dim, and then we saw it. The tree, the split oak, the one stuffed with bones. Mia froze. No, we didn't come this way." Brian dropped his pack, swearing violently. We'd been walking in circles. But it wasn't circles. Not really. The compass spun wildly, never pointing north. My phone dead, though I'd charged it before the trip. The forest wasn't letting us out. We pushed on anyway, driven by desperation. But the deeper we went, the stranger it got. The air thickened, heavy and metallic like blood. The trees seemed closer together, their branches tangling overhead, shutting out what little light was left. And then we heard it. Footsteps. Behind us. We turned, but there was nothing there. Just shadows between the trunks. Then the whisper came again, slithering through the leaves. 2 nights remain. Mia broke down sobbing. Brian gripped the hatchet, so tight his knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream at the forest, to demand what it wanted from us. But deep down, I already knew. It didn't want us to leave. It wanted us to stay. Forever. By the time the sun vanished, we were broken. Our legs ached. Our throats were raw from shouting Derek's name, and our minds felt frayed at the edges. We made camp in a small clearing, though none of us wanted to. The idea of stopping, even for a moment, felt like inviting the forest to swallow us. But Derek couldn't walk anymore. He slumped in a heap, his face pale and slick with sweat, whispering nonsense under his breath. Brian built a fire like his life depended on it. Sparks rose into the black canopy above, swallowed almost instantly by the dark. Mia curled up against her pack, rocking back and forth, whispering prayers I'd never heard from her before. I sat staring into the flames, my mind racing. That voice, the countdown, it wasn't random. We had 2 nights left. 2 nights before what? Before we ended up like Derek? Before the forest took us whole? The fire crackled, snapping me out of my thoughts. That's when I saw it. A shadow, not ours. It stretched across the ground opposite the fire, long and thin, shifting as though someone stood just beyond the light. But when I looked up, there was nothing there. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, and it was gone. But then another appeared, and another, long, twisting silhouettes writhing at the edges of the clearing, circling us like wolves. Brian saw them too. He jumped up, swinging the hatchet wildly. "Show yourselves," he screamed. His voice cracked, echoing back at us like the trees were mocking him. Mia clutched Derek's arm, sobbing. "Stop. You're making it worse." And maybe she was right, because the shadows, they moved closer. The firelight bent around them, distorting, flickering like it was struggling to stay alive. Derek stirred, his lips pulling back into a broken smile. For the first time since we'd found him, he spoke in his own voice. "They're waiting." I froze. Waiting for what? His smile widened, his empty face tilting toward me. "For you." The fire roared suddenly, flaring high enough to scorch the branches above. The shadows vanished all at once. As it burned away, silence fell heavy over us. None of us spoke again that night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the fire hadn't saved us. It had only bought us time. At dawn, the fire was nothing but smoldering ash. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, but I hadn't dared close them. Every time the flames hissed, I thought I saw movement just beyond the smoke. Derek was worse. His skin looked stretched, almost translucent, veins spiderwebbing beneath the surface. His lips moved constantly, whispering words that didn't belong to any language I knew. Mia hovered over him, stroking his hair, muttering that we'd find help. Brian wasn't buying it anymore. He sat a few feet away, staring at Derek with pure hatred in his eyes. "He's not coming back," Brian muttered. "Whatever he is now, it's not Derek, and he's dragging us down with him." I wanted to tell him to shut up, but part of me agreed. Something was using Derek, wearing him. We broke camp and pushed deeper into the woods, though it felt less like walking and more like being led. The trail was gone now, swallowed by undergrowth. Every direction looked the same. That's when we noticed the markings. Strange symbols carved into the bark of the trees. Circles, jagged lines, spirals that seemed to twist if you stared too long. They weren't random. They repeated, as though forming a pattern that only the forest understood. Mia traced one with her finger. "What do they mean?" she whispered. Brian swatted her hand away. "Don't touch it. For all we know, that's what started this." But it was too late. Derek stirred in my arms. His head snapped toward the tree, lips curling into that awful smile again. "They're older than us," he rasped. "Older than everything." I nearly dropped him. His voice was layered, like two people speaking at once. Derek and something else beneath. Before I could say anything, a sound echoed through the trees. A low, guttural moan, so deep it rattled in my chest. It wasn't animal. It wasn't human either. We froze, the forest still with us. And then movement. Between the trees, something shifted. Tall, gaunt, with limbs too long, its body bending at impossible angles as it slid between the trunks. I caught only glimpses, but my stomach turned at the sight. Mia screamed. Brian raised the hatchet. I just held on to Derek, who was laughing now, loud and hysterical, his empty face tilted toward the sound. "They're coming," he crooned. "They always come for the last night." We ran. Branches tore my arms. Roots caught at my boots. But the sound behind us was worse, the dragging scrape of something impossibly tall moving through the trees. Mia clutched Derek's arm, dragging him as best she could, though he stumbled like a drunk, laughing through his ruined face. Brian charged ahead, swinging the hatchet at anything that got in our way. Cursing under his breath, we burst into a clearing, gasping for air. For a moment, I thought we'd lost it. The silence pressed heavy again, broken only by Derek's wheezing chuckle. Then the trees shifted. At first, I thought it was my eyes playing tricks, but no. The trunks bent, bowing away from something pushing through. And then it stepped into the clearing. Tall, too tall, its limbs spindly but long enough to drag along the ground. Its skin was gray, stretched taut over bone, and where a face should have been, there was nothing, just smooth flesh, blank and featureless, except for the mouth. The mouth stretched across where eyes and nose should have been. A gash, jagged and wet, lined with too many teeth. Mia screamed. Brian raised a hatchet, but I knew it wouldn't matter. That thing wasn't something you could kill. The creature tilted its head toward Derek, and for the first time, Derek went silent. His body stiffened, trembling like a puppet on strings. And then it spoke, not with its mouth, but through him. One night remains. The words ripped through Derek's throat, a sound not meant for human lungs. He collapsed, twitching, while the thing's blank face turned toward us. Brian swung the hatchet with a roar, but the blade cut only air. The creature moved faster than anything that size should. 1 second it was across the clearing. The next it was inches from Brian, towering over him. I swear I saw his shadow tear away from his body, twisting toward the thing's feet, like it was being sucked out of him. Brian staggered, dropped the hatchet, gasping like he couldn't breathe. I grabbed Mia, yanking her back toward the trees. Run. I screamed. We dragged Derek between us, his body limp but heavy. Behind us, Brian's scream tore through the clearing. A scream that cut off suddenly, like someone had clamped a hand over his mouth. But when I looked back, Brian was gone. The clearing was empty. The creature, too. Only the hatchet lay in the dirt, its blade slick with something dark. We didn't stop running until our lungs burned and our legs threatened to give out. By the time we collapsed into a small hollow surrounded by thick brush, the sun was already dipping below the tree line. Mia fell to her knees, gasping, tears streaking her dirt-covered face. "We left him," she whispered. "We left Brian." I wanted to say something, anything, but what words could I offer? Brian hadn't just vanished. He'd been taken. Derek lay sprawled on the ground, twitching, muttering to himself. His voice cracked, repeating the same phrase over and over. "They'll come again tonight. They'll come again tonight." We set up camp in silence. No fire this time, we didn't dare. The shadows were bad enough without giving them something to dance around. Night fell heavy, swallowing the last of the light. The forest grew colder, the air sharp in my lungs. Every sound felt amplified. The snap of a twig, the whisper of leaves. Mia huddled close, clutching Derek's limp arm. I sat awake, gripping Brian's abandoned hatchet, though I knew it wouldn't save us. Then the whisper came, not from Derek this time, from the forest itself. "One night remains." The words slithered to the branches, echoing from everywhere at once. Mia whimpered, burying her face in her hands. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay still, to listen. That's when I noticed the shadows again. They didn't move with us. Didn't match. 3 shadows where there should have been 2. The third one stood apart, tall and crooked, its limbs too long, its head bent unnaturally low. It swayed like it was waiting. And then Derek screamed. His body arched off the ground, every muscle taut, his jaw snapping open with a sickening crack. Black fluid poured from his mouth, thick and tar-like, soaking the dirt beneath him. Mia shrieked, trying to hold him down, but his strength was inhuman. His voice tore through the night, guttural and layered, words twisting in a language I couldn't understand. The shadows closed in. The tall one leaned closer, and I realized something horrifying. This wasn't just a countdown. This was a ritual. And when the third night came, it wouldn't just take Derek. It would take us all. I don't remember falling asleep. Maybe I never really did. My eyelids had closed, but my body never relaxed. Every sound outside the tent pressed against me like a weight. When I opened my eyes again, the fire had burned down to a faint glow, and the forest was drowned in silence. Not the normal kind, but the suffocating kind, like the whole world was holding its breath. I turned my head toward Mike. His sleeping bag was there, zipped tight, but he wasn't breathing. At least I couldn't hear it. I whispered his name. Nothing. A chill skated down my spine, and I leaned closer, touching the fabric of his bag. It was cold. My throat tightened as I unzipped it slowly, terrified of what I'd find. But when I pulled it open, it was empty. The air inside the tent suddenly grew heavy, pressing on my chest. My ears buzzed like a swarm of flies trapped inside my skull. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It came from right beside me, soft and sharp, as though it slid through the air like a knife. Leave. I froze, my mouth dry, my eyes darting the corners of the tent. The voice was low, stretched, unnatural, like someone trying to imitate speech. Mike! I croaked, though I knew it wasn't him. The whisper came again, this time behind me. Leave before it's too late. I spun, the tent's thin walls swaying, shadows twisting across the fabric. My heart hammered, but I forced myself to unzip the flap and push outside. The night greeted me with a bone-deep chill. The moon was gone, smothered by clouds, and the trees bent inward as if they were leaning closer to listen. The fire pit was almost out, just ashes and weak embers. And then I saw him, Mike. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, facing the forest. His body was rigid, arms limp at his sides. I stumbled toward him, calling his name. He didn't move. When I reached him, I grabbed his shoulder and spun him around. His face was pale, eyes wide open, but they weren't his eyes. They were pitch black, swallowing every flicker of light. He opened his mouth, and the same whisper poured out. Leave. I stumbled back, tripping over a root, my body slamming against the ground. My head spun. When I looked again, Mike was gone. Just gone. But the whisper remained, floating around me, curling through the trees, choking the night. And I realized whatever had taken him wasn't warning me. It was mocking me. The forest felt wrong the moment I stepped out of tent. The air was colder than it had any right to be, heavy and wet, like I was walking to the lungs of something alive. I called Mike's name again and again, but all I got back were echoes that sounded too much like someone else repeating me. I tried to follow the path we had taken yesterday, the one that led back toward the stream, but within minutes it was gone. I spun in circles, staring at the ground, at the trees. Everything looked the same. The trail had vanished, as if the forest had swallowed it whole. My stomach twisted with dread. I grabbed one of the trunks and dragged my fingernail across the bark, marking it with a long scratch. Then I walked straight, counted my steps, determined to carve a way back if I got lost. After 50 steps, I marked another tree. When I looked back, my breath froze in my throat. The first tree was gone, not just out of sight, gone. I ran back, heart pounding, and found nothing but smooth bark where my mark should have been. Something was playing with me. By the time I staggered back to camp, the sun was already slipping lower, though it couldn't have been more than an hour since I left. My bag lay torn open, food scattered and missing. The cans, the trail mix, even the jerky, it was all gone. Only my water bottle remained, lying on its side in the dirt. That's when I noticed the trees. Symbols were carved into them, jagged shapes I didn't recognize, circles within circles, lines that bent and split like veins. They hadn't been there this morning, I was sure of it, and they glowed faintly in the dim light. I stumbled backward, shaking, whispering to myself that it wasn't real, it couldn't be real. But the forest answered me with a low hiss, like the wind had found a voice. And in that voice, I heard the words again. Leave. Only this time, the whisper didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a promise. I don't remember deciding to walk. My legs just moved, dragging me deeper into the woods. The forest was too quiet again. No birds, no crickets, not even the sound of branches creaking. It was as if the world had pressed pause, leaving me alone with my pounding heartbeat. That's when I saw it. An old, rotting tent leaned against a fallen log, half swallowed by moss and leaves. The fabric was shredded, eaten away by time. A rusted lantern lay on its side, and beside it, a pile of bones, small, fragile, scattered like someone had dropped them in a hurry. My throat tightened, but I couldn't look away. Inside the collapsed tent was a book. Its leather cover was water damaged and black with mold. But when I picked it up, something in me knew it mattered. I brushed off the dirt and flipped it open. The handwriting inside was shaky, frantic. Pages torn, others smeared with something brown I told myself was mud. The first line made my stomach clench. If you are reading this, you are already marked. I swallowed hard and kept going. The journal told of a group of campers, 4 of them, who had come here years ago. At first, everything was fine. Then the whispers started. The missing food, the strange marks on trees. One by one, they disappeared. The writer had been the last. He wrote about a shadow that lived in the forest, a thing older than the land itself, feeding on fear and stealing the souls of the lost. It could twist paths, mimic voices, and were the faces of the dead. Do not follow the voices. One page read in large, desperate letters. They are not your friends. They belong to it. The final entry made my blood run cold. It wants me tonight. I hear it outside the tent. If anyone finds this, run. Don't look back. Don't. The sentence ended in a jagged line, as if the pen had been yanked from the writer's hand. I stared at the page until my vision blurred. My chest felt tight, like the forest itself was squeezing air out of me. Then I heard it. Behind me, Mike's voice. Soft, weak, calling my name. Please help me. I dropped the journal. My hands shook as I turned toward the sound. And there he was, standing between the trees, his face pale, his eyes wide. But something in me already knew it wasn't him. Mike. My voice cracked, more aghast than a word. He stood there at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by the trees. His clothes were filthy, torn in places, and his skin was so pale it almost glowed in the dying light. His eyes, God, his eyes weren't right. They were too dark, too deep, like pits that had no end. Please, he whispered. It hurts. Come with me. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to run, but my legs stayed locked in place. My best friend was right there, begging me, but I couldn't ignore the words in the journal. Do not follow the voices. I forced myself to shake my head. You're not him, I said, though my voice trembled. Mike tilted his head slowly, unnaturally, like a marionette. His mouth curved into a grin that didn't belong on his face. Then he spoke again, but this time it wasn't just his voice. Dozens of voices poured out of him, layered on top of each other, men and women, children, voices screaming, crying, whispering. Come with us, they hissed. Stay forever. I stumbled back, my hand brushing against the journal, where I had dropped it. I snatched it up like a lifeline, flipping desperately through the pages. Somewhere in there had to be a way to fight this thing. Near the back, I found a section where the handwriting grew jagged, rushed. The shadow cannot be destroyed. It is bound to this place, but fire keeps it away. Fire and will. If you can make it to the clearing at the heart of the woods, you may find the way out, but it will try to stop you. It will wear their faces. The clearing at the heart of the woods. The way out. I looked up again. Mike, or the thing wearing him, was closer now, only a few steps away. His eyes seemed to drink in the dim light, and his grin widened until it looked like his face might tear apart. I clutched the journal to my chest. You're not taking me, I whispered, more to myself than to it. The grin vanished. Its face went blank. Then it opened its mouth, wider than any human mouth should stretch, and let out a sound that was a scream or a growl, but something in between, something that made my bones ache. And then the trees around me shuddered, their branches bending and creaking as if they were alive. The forest itself had heard me, and it wasn't going to let me go easily. The forest moved. The sound of branches groaning was deafening, like the woods were stretching awake after centuries of sleep. The trees leaned in closer, their tops blotting out what little moonlight remained. I clutched the journal in one hand, my flashlight in the other, though its beam flickered weakly, like even the batteries were afraid. The thing that looked like Mike stood still, head cocked, watching me. Then, without warning, it dissolved into darkness, like smoke vanishing into wind. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I just sprinted, following a desperate instinct that screamed at me to find the clearing the journal spoke of. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. The whispers chased me. From every side, they came, voices familiar and strange. My mother's voice, calling me home for dinner. A teacher from grade school. A girl I had once loved. All of them echoing through the trees, pleading, crying, demanding, "Stay with us. Don't leave. We miss you." I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voices weren't just outside. They were inside me, worming their way into my skull. Then the woods opened up. I stumbled into a wide clearing, ringed by towering black pines. The ground was bare dirt, no grass, no leaves, like nothing living dared grow here. In the center, a pit of stone, charred black as though fires had burned there for centuries. The journal's words flashed in my head. "Fire keeps it away." My hand shook as I dropped my bag and dug out the lighter I had carried for campfires. It clicked, spark caught. I grabbed a broken branch from the ground, thrust it into the flame, and held it high. The darkness recoiled. From the tree-line, the shadow poured in. It wasn't a shape, it was all shapes. Limbs bending the wrong way, faces flashing in and out, mouths screaming silently. The air grew heavy, pressing down on me until my knees buckled. "Stay," it whispered, not with one voice, but with hundreds, thousands, all layered until the ground seemed to shake with it. I screamed back, shoving the burning branch toward it. "You're not taking me." The firelight pushed it back, but only barely. It swirled and hissed, closing in, circling me like a pack of wolves. My arm ached from holding the torch, and I knew the fire wouldn't last. That's when I remembered the pit. Dropping to my knees, I grabbed every dry twig and branch I could find, shoving them inside. My lighter sparked again, catching, and flames licked upward, hungrily devouring the kindling. The fire roared to life, brighter, hotter, a pillar of light in the suffocating dark. The shadow screamed. It reared back, its form unraveling, faces twisting into agony before melting away. For the first time, I hoped I was winning. But as the flames grew, the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, and in them, beneath the cries and screams, I heard something else. Laughter. It wasn't afraid. Not really. It was only playing with me. The fire roared higher, throwing shadows across the clearing. My chest heaved, my throat raw from screaming. For a moment, just a moment, I thought it was over. The shadow writhed, fragments of faces tearing apart in the flames. It shrieked, a sound like metal splitting, and then it collapsed back into the tree-line. Silence. My knees buckled. I almost collapsed into the dirt. But I forced myself upright, clutching the journal like a holy book. My body screamed at me to rest, but I knew better. This wasn't over. Not yet. The journal had spoken of an exit, a way out, and if there was ever a chance, this had to be it. I turned and ran. The forest stretched endlessly, but now, through the trees, I saw a pale glow light. Real light. I pushed toward it, branches tearing at my skin, lungs burning, the whispers clawing at my mind. "You belong here. Don't leave us. We'll follow." I burst out of the tree-line and stumbled onto a narrow dirt road. The sudden openness made me dizzy. My legs gave out, and I collapsed face first into the gravel. Headlights blinded me. A car screeched to a halt just feet away. A man's voice shouted, panicked. Someone grabbed me, lifted me into the back seat. I was too weak to fight, too weak to speak. All I could do was let them drive, the trees finally falling away behind us. For the first time in days, I thought I was safe, but then I saw it, in the side mirror. At first, just a smudge of darkness in the reflection. Then it shifted, forming eyes, those same endless pits I had seen in Mike's face. They stared back at me, unblinking, and the whisper came again, not from the woods, not from outside, from the seat right beside me. "We're not done." My blood turned to ice. I forced myself to turn my head. Nothing there, just the empty seat. But in the mirror, the shadow still sat, smiling. I looked away, shutting my eyes, but the whisper didn't stop. It never stopped. I had escaped the forest, but I hadn't escaped it. They thought the nightmare ended when they left the woods, but some shadows never let go. Even in the safety of daylight, whispers follow and eyes watch from the dark. Remember, when you go camping, not everything that walks a forest is human, and sometimes survival is only the beginning.